but we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Finance Committee meeting that will continue the budgetary process. We started that budgetary process back last month by beginning to look at our revenue budgets, and we covered most of the revenue budgets in those first two meetings. But today, the overall meeting, we have just a few more or less single page revenues that we at least need to acknowledge. There's not a lot of discussion to go through them, but we will acknowledge them. There's 12 of them, to be honest with you, from senior citizens to the courthouse construction fund. So we'll breeze through those unless somebody has a quick question or Kelly has a comment to make. Then we have 4 expenditure budgets that we want to look at today. We have Tony Stone with us from the road department that will be presenting his budget. It'll be a pretty easy and brief presentation. We have 2 single-page expenditure budgets between the coroner and Circuit Judge Dan Ritchie. And then we have a little bit more complicated budget in the sheriff and jail funds. And it must be pretty good because the sheriff brought all his bodyguards. So, but we'll be looking at the sheriff's budget and want to tell the sheriff and the sheriff's department how much we appreciate their putting their budget together so quickly for us to look at. So, any questions before we get started running through all this? We're going to look at the revenue budgets first, guys. And again, they're pretty much basically single page. The senior citizens may be a little bit longer. It's a 2-pager. Looking at the senior citizens budget, Kelly, any remarkable things that you want to note for us, ma'am?
Well, the senior citizens, they have submitted an expense report already. And there's going to be a huge difference between revenues and expenses if we leave it like this, if the revenue budget has to stay like this. I've talked to them and we're gonna meet next week. Amanda's on vacation, but we're gonna meet next week and go over the revenues. I think they got quite a bit of CARES Act money, and I just don't know that we can put that in the budget this time, because they're not sure if they're gonna get any more. So.
Did they use all that they got?
I don't know, it was just combined with her, I would say yes, they did.
The only reason I'm asking that is because like when the county general has a carryover, then when we're doing our budget process, we can take that carryover and actually add it back in as revenue. So I was wondering if they may have had any carryover that they could do that.
No.
No, okay. All right, well, guys, this is one of our larger supplements that we do in services to citizens, direct services to the citizens. Judge and I have seen it vary over the years from as little as $40,000 to this past year. If you look on the second page, 3401.8801, it's a little over halfway down. And it shows how much money that we give them in monthly support from County General. In 2019, it was $218,000. In 2020, 343. Now, keep in mind that isn't that when we bought that vehicle? We bumped it up and bought them a van. Our 21 budget, $282,422. That 313,802, Kelly, is that just something you extrapolated, or?
That's actually what we budgeted in 2021, but then 10%, with the 10% off, it was 282.
So you're just carrying it straight across with no increase?
Yes.
That, to me, that's probably one of the more noteworthy things about the senior citizens revenue budgets. Judge Kelly was just telling us that they had a large influx of CARES money, COVID money, in this past, in this year, that they don't anticipate getting this next year. So she's had a brief look at their expenditure budget, and they're going to be short quite a bit. So we'll wait until we see what their expenditure budgets come in later and revisit all this. Guys, any questions from the JPs, any others? By the way, I appreciate all of them coming. The circuit clerk Osceola Recorder Act, 25%, just 18.5. Nothing particularly noteworthy there. The Recorder Act, 75%. Now, circuit clerk actually had no input on any of these revenues, did she?
We met and we talked about them a little bit, but basically, we decided to just go ahead and project out based on what we had received year to date this year.
Okay, so pretty much just extrapolated.
Yeah.
The Economic Development CD Fund, we're showing no activity there to speak of. Sheriff Helicopter Fund, again, we're showing no activity out of the ordinary there. Same with emergency operations in the Sheriff's Department. Economic Development Income. It's based on tax collections. Our tax collections have been averaging 3.2 to 3.5, 3.6. Projecting 3.4 and only able to budget 90% of that, so $3,060,000. GIA grant. That's a state grant, and they,
Juvenile grant.
sorry?
That's the juvenile grant. It's gone, it'll go away.
It will go away?
Yeah, they'll have a juvenile unit.
Ah! Will zero, you're exactly right.
So, Bo, that's what I emailed you about. I didn't know if this would go away, but since it is, what are you gonna do with the balance in that fund? You have to
Well,
send it back.
I think Jennifer sent a letter to Peggy, I don't know if she's got it yet or not. The grant that came in for this year, we haven't used any of that money, it'll have to go back. But what was left from last year is our money, because we've already closed it out. It's sheriff's office money.
Okay, then our JAG grant, that's also through the Sheriff's Department. We don't have anything projected there. Anything we anticipate there, Bo?
It just depends on if the feds put anything out there or not.
They're putting it everywhere else.
Yeah.
and I'm gonna do this very slow so I get it right. LLPDG. Again, state grant monies, it's just a small $2,000 for a letter grant. Mental health fund grant, is that with that's not with the drug court, that's with,
No, it's mid-stock court system.
okay. Oh, that's the one that we're actually more or less doing the paperwork on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just a password.
Just a
The
package.
total is $300,000, so I'll just put the difference in there. It's almost finished, those.
And aren't you and Bo the ones that are doing that?
Mm-hmm. We do our end of stuff, yes.
Okay, there was provisions in there for y'all to be compensated for that, so are y'all taking care of that portion also?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be completed by the end of the year.
I know probably both of you do that about that. Courthouse construction funds, Ms. Molly? Not projecting any revenues, are we? Are you disappointed?
It's terrible.
That's been fun.
Been trying to figure out a way to make that money keep growing, but
Well, you've done very, very well. You and your committee and county judge's office have done extremely well at utilizing just
I can't, we might, depending on how it all goes, we may have a little bit of interest in, but probably not enough to really talk about.
That $5,000 back in the sales
Oh,
tax.
okay.
All right, so that'll clear us right there on the revenues for the moment. And I'd like to move into the road department, expenditure budget, if you can locate that. we've got, Judge, I actually used the term czar when I was talking about you while ago. You were the czar of the county roads. But this is truly the county judge's, direct responsibility, and he utilizes, road superintendent Tony Stone over here against the wall to do his czar wishes, and they both do a really good job. Any remarks you want to make, Judge, at all, as far as that? Now, we're on expenditures now, and my understanding is y'all haven't made any major changes as far as major line items or anything.
No, I think everything's going well, in spite of the pandemic and some minor problems filling vacancies, within the department. We've done remarkably well, or Mr. Stone has done remarkably well, I'll say that, in, taking care of our roads and bridges. We've had a couple of issues here lately with, head walls being set on fire, accidentally on the bridges that, I guess that's taken place within the last 2 weeks. Our goal, we had set for ourselves was 1,300 loads of, road material. We came pretty close to that in spite of, like I said, some of the challenges happening this year. We expect to get back to that number next year or exceed it. But as far as the expenditures go, we do not foresee anything outside of what was budgeted in 2021.
Any major, you've got 100,000 still in your equipment purchase budget. Expect anything really big?
I don't expect anything.
That's the worst ones.
I know. You never know what's gonna happen.
Guys, if you look at the bottom of that second page on the road department down there, road department total, budgeted, projected $3,389,335. Projected, revenues at $2,931,426, but then we have a 831 fund balance to add back in of roughly $500,000, so it more than balances out. It's not overly funded, but it is funded, so we're in good shape there.
So what about, on the gravel, dirt, and slag?
250,000?
Yeah, yes. So we've spent well over 500,000 the last couple of years, and we've already spent over 500 this year, but we're only budgeting 250 for next year.
Well, the budget this year was only 250, I'm sorry. Judge, you want to discuss that at all?
Yeah, what we're doing is the only way that we can get out that much road material and get them to where they need to be is to stockpile. So that's the reason for that other number, that we stockpile it in 1 year and then we put it out in the next year.
I think what she's asking though is, why are we spending over 500 on a $250,000 budget and not just make it 500? Is that your real question?
Yes, that's yes.
And that'd be fine. In essence, that's what we're doing. The only reason it was put out like that is to kind of give everyone an idea of how the road department functions.
What he's been doing, see, is taking it like he's not using any of the 200,000 in asphalt.
Right.
And he has within his prerogative to move within line items once it's expended, so he's been using that prerogative, and then we've been balancing it out at the end. But now,
And what's the, the 2036, the road materials, reserve, is that what that is?
yes,
And so we haven't used any of that.
and that's the extra that he's talking about,
Okay,
where he's building the stockpile. So you take that 250 and the front 250 and you got 500.
gotcha, okay.
Comments, Kevin, at all? We looking at it all right? Okay. Anything else you want us to do, Judge?
Can't think of anything.
Tony, I really haven't given you the opportunity you really wanted to talk.
No, I didn't hear anything to say.
Well, was that quick enough for
That's
you?
quick, I like it.
I'm gonna go ahead and just look at these two one-pagers because there's virtually no changes in those. Look at the coroner's budget right quick, guys. Just straight across on the coroner's budget. Nothing remarkable on any of the line items.
Y'all through with it? Mr. Stone?
Yes, sir. You back on those?
No,
Are you sure? No, go
no,
ahead.
I made sure my own question, no.
Okay, all right, so Kelly, nothing remarkable on the coroner budget unless you got something.
No, he just requested that we just carry everything over.
Same with Dan Ritchie.
Judge Ritchie actually did a few changes, but it ends up being the same total. The bottom line total is the same, but he did change, and move some stuff from
Bunch of
general
small
office
equipment
supplies.
up and,
Yes, and he's needing to purchase a laptop, and so that's why he just took the money from office supplies and moved it to small equipment. And there might have been a couple other, yeah, there was $100 that he said he did not need for postage, and he added it to his service contracts. And I think that were the only changes.
11,250 for 21 and 11,250 for 22.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the JPs over those two budgets? All right, now then, we did that just so we got nothing but y'all, Sheriff.
Thank you very much.
For the rest of the meeting. No pressure here. Kelly, you want to start us off on, let's look at the general sheriff's budget. That's account 1,040,1001. That would be the sheriff's department. Kelly, I'm gonna open the floor to you first to see if you wanna, I don't see any change at all to speak of.
There was a little bit of money added to internet, but, and then a little bit added to the travel and transport line. Not any big changes there. And then there was computer services added.
41,000?
And I think that was and there was the change in the personal services section because of what was passed last month. The changes to the salaries and stuff.
Justice Solution.
Sheriff, the 41,000 on the computer services, what, just
I think.
curious as much as anything, so.
I take, Nick, he's not here, he's off on honeymoon, but I think that's Justice Solution that we entered into that agreement last year, a few months ago to do our new system for the sheriff's office. And I believe that's the bulk of that, but not all of it. I can't answer that 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
So remind me just about the vehicles again. So last year we purchased vehicles,
We purchase vehicles every year.
but
Most of the time, we try to replace, 6 vehicles per year. But we got behind
that's right, okay.
over the
Right,
years,
that's
and
right.
so that's what you're seeing, on that $350,000. We backed up and, what did we buy, Sheriff? 11, I think is what we ended up with that year, wasn't it? New vehicles. Not putting it on the spot, but
I believe that's correct.
I think we were looking for 10 and ended up, you got such a good deal that I think you ended up managing to get 11.
So how many do we have total?
Oh, I should have asked that.
You remember, about 40.
45, 44, 44, 45, I believe.
And just replacing 6 a year. And
I
the
mean-
ones that we replace almost always have over 200,000 miles.
Oh, I remember that from the, yes, there's,
They're asking deputies to get out there and drive 80 and 85 and more miles an hour chasing bad guys and more out vehicles sometimes, so we gotta be really careful.
well, so we replaced 11 because we had extra money. So this year we're gonna replace 6.
Yeah, in 20, we bought the extras. that 1 year. That was kind of a one-time promise deal that sheriff just really needed, and we tried to kind of catch him up.
We really need to be getting closer to 80 years,
Well, that's what I was
rotate them
thinking.
every 5
So
years,
usually in 6.
5 to 6
Aren't
years.
they averaging around, by the time you outfit them, around 30 to 35,000 per vehicle?
They're in the mid to high 30s.
Yeah.
Vehicles just under 30, just a base vehicle, anytime you add equipment, add about 5,500, 6,500 more.
Well, I think we should look at the vehicles.
It may be increasing.
Well, or yeah, just kind of take an inventory of them and see how many miles and.
Right.
What we
I can get that for you, but we really need to be getting toward eight vehicles a year.
can use that.
That would,
That puts you in a 5 year.
5 to 6 year cycle.
I know what you're saying. I
Yeah.
know where you're going now. And I see what you're doing. So, just a reminder to everybody, especially the new guys, in the budgetary process, we've looked at the revenues, and Kelly will compile all those for us and see how much money we've got in total, and then by department. And then we'll take each of these expenditure requests from all the different elected officials and department heads. And then we'll look at those and we'll kind of balance them out. And then we go back and finalize everything. So this is the sheriff's first presentation. So now then, this is why we do this. We'd like to have more information about the condition of your vehicles, how many you have,
Right, I get you that.
and where does it come? Is 6 really enough? Or do we need to be looking at?
Well, like I said, we need to be looking at 8, but I'll get you the list of all the mileage and what vehicles are and your models and all that
Okay.
when we come back for the final.
So,
I have an item on that end. Repair expense, when you put something, estimate of cost in there for repairs for.
Yes, we got a line item
Okay.
for repairs. When I first came in office, we had about everything out there wore out, and our expenses were just astronomically high. In the, if I'm not mistaken, that first year, we ended up to 2 years, 11 and 12 vehicles in 2010. And I believe we bought 11 that year. I got a special deal on another one. And we didn't get any vehicle allocation in 12. Y'all give us the extra for 11 to get me out of the hole.
that's right.
And then it moved along, we had these other, SROs, one of the deputies, and that's the reason we came back again to pick up a few more, and then courthouse security guys, and we just had to get a few more vehicles. But, if we could get on an 8 vehicle a year rotation, I think that's gonna keep us in good shape. What it also does is keep the expenses down. You start running them over 5 years and over 150, 200,000 miles on a police car, and your repair cost goes sky high. There's a police car, even though it might say 150,000 miles, you've got a lot of idle time on a patrol vehicle. It's more than the mileage, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. That line item on repairs, Justice McDonald, is about halfway down the front page.
Yeah.
It's 2023,
Okay.
$30,000.
Okay.
And if you look, like, it has actually gone down. In 19 it was 39 and then 32. Yeah.
Well, that's when we ended up buying the extra cars in the next year. So you're actually ahead of the game in your thoughts.
I think if you went back and looked at the first year that I was on court, our vehicle maintenance was more like 50 or 60
It was
thousand.
high. It was high.
And that's why we went ahead and we started trying to get more cars because we were only buying 5 at that time. We got it up to 6 and we discussed last year about going to 8, but I was noticing it's not really in here.
This might be a good year to do it though, because we have other additional funds out there.
I've driven those cars with 200,000 miles on them. You don't want to be in there.
200,000 cars, more like 300,000 with all the idle time if they're sitting in an accident scene or something. The engine's got a lot more time on it, our time than just mileage.
How about the travel and transport budget? I know you increased it a little bit, but do you think with the juvenile facility closed now, you're gonna be
Which line
trans-
item did that?
Well, now, we've got 2 different budgets to look at. too.
sheriff and?
We got sheriff and then you got jail.
I think that's on the juvenile budget.
Got it.
And that's, we also have a juvenile budget, and so that was one thing when we get there that I wanted to talk about, maybe, actually, instead of showing it in the jail, showing it on the
Right,
juvenile side, and
that's right. And, then there's one,
good question.
I don't remember which line item it is, that we were talking about on the juvenile cost to house them outside. Bart, you remember which line item that is, Kelly?
The jail board, is that
I
what?
think it's on the jail board.
Yeah, it's under the jail.
Just as Ash and I talked about it briefly a time or two, but, it's nothing that we brought to court yet, but, some in my department, including me, would kinda like to put that budget line item on the juvenile side, on the, juvenile officer side, then they can control that budget. If we leave it in my budget, and we got, you know, say we put $150,000 in there, I can't control that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because the juvenile officers, they put these juveniles wherever, and if they got it in their budget, we believe that they would pay more attention to that budget line item when they're placing people instead of just sticking them over here or there constantly and blow my budget out. You know what I'm saying? And whether if they get that 150,000, whatever it turns out to be, just Ash, I would like to put it in their budget.
Give them direct responsibility.
Give them direct responsibility over it, and then they will manage it a lot better. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
If it falls back on them,
if it falls back on them, they're gonna watch it closer.
yes.
I would too if it was me.
I mentioned this to Justice White,
Yeah.
earlier, that we might want to look at that.
Sheriff, any other comments on any of your line items and just your general department budget? Now, we've got several minor budgets that we're gonna breach through here.
No, I understand.
Uh,
When we come back with a final, I'll go validate that 41,000, but I'm pretty sure that's just a solution to, we just, got the new system installed, and, I'll get you a list of all the vehicles, what the particulars on.
And it's not that we need mileage on 41
No.
cars, it's just general conditions of your vehicles. Okay, let's look at the jail inmate incentive totals. Kelly, anything there, ma'am?
Just carried it across, it doesn't look like it's gonna quite project out that high, but I don't know if Bo probably has some input on this one, he deals with the social security.
Well, it's probably been a little lower than last year because of COVID.
Yeah.
Jail population, but you just never know when you run the report who's on social security and who's not.
Yeah. On the sheriff communication, Kelly gave us both a revenue sheet and an expense sheet. Two different sheets, but they're both on. If you have trouble finding, look at the bottom of the expenditure budget, the very last on the left, and they'll tell you what budget that goes to. Sheriff communication totals. And right now it's just basically a carryover, correct, Kelly?
Yeah, and we do a lot of transfers out of this account, so the money comes in, but then it usually goes back into the jail, the supplement jail.
Guys, any questions on the communication fund or any of it? Drug control, totals, sheriff drug control totals. We bumped that up just the same. Isn't that fund that we kind of set up for?
We did set it up, and I'm not sure that.
We started out with
I think what this is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna ask the sheriff. Drug control, we've had some asset forfeitures in there.
Yes.
From, they used some money out of there to do, if you remember the big arrest down around the south end of the county, where they busted all the gambling machines. Well, there was some asset forfeiture out of that, and that went back into this fund,
That's right.
if I'm not badly mistaken. So we started with 1,000, and I think that's a carryover of what's been saved.
Yeah, you look at their 8/31 fund balance, there's actually almost 14,000 in fund
Oh,
balance.
yeah, so that's just for cities.
Mhm.
Those are seized assets that were recovered after they took them to court, and the judge ordered it forfeited back to.
That recorder wasn't on that joke about that, but tell you how much they actually probably really cool. But I won't. Act 1188 fund totals. Kelly, can you describe Act 1188 or?
This, what the act is?
Yeah.
No, sorry, can't.
And it's where the state passed that, long several years ago. We started out with $20 for every citation come in to, assist the jail. And now it's up to $40 to assist the jail. And, I think it's, don't hold me to this, I think it's felonies and class I misdemeanors. You get up to $40 on every citation, every charge written. They come in to help, run the jail, finance the jail. That's what they made it.
Yeah, I see where it's transferred over, but it's much lower than it has been. And I guess again, it's kind of like Bo's selling this, COVID's really knocked down their cases and stuff. I'd rather under budget is over. Helicopter funds, that goes way back, and it's just an account that we kind of hold on to, but you know, there's no expenditures in that. On the emergency operations fund, again, we have a two-sheet deal. We've got the revenues, and then we've got the expenditures. An 8/31 fund balance of 1292.81, and just a projected budget of 1,000 on small equipment and operating expenses of 1,500. Officers Protection Equipment Fund, this is a hit and miss thing. Sometimes we get projects where Sheriff's Department needs new protective equipment, new vests, new stuff like that, and sometimes we get grants, sometimes we get donations, but we have a fund set up for that stuff. Sheriff, do we have a K-9 unit in the county now?
We retired our K-9 just, a few weeks ago. We do have a K-9. It's not our K-9. It's, the handler's K-9. It came from, Fleeman Police Department that he purchased himself. And, but as far as to answer your question, we don't have a county K-9 that we own.
Okay, on that GIA grant, now this is the one where I had the questions about, will we have this in 2022?
We won't.
Okay. That's the juvie thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I finally got to the page where I had.
So that's just.
Yeah, that's gonna zero out. And then the JAG grant that we mentioned in revenue a while ago, again, I have an expenditure sheet. Everything was just carried straight across. Bo, any remarks on the expenses on the JAG grant? I mean, you don't have to, I just.
Well, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, it's ranged between 9,000, 11,000, but I can't say that, you know, it just depends on what comes up, you know. Now, that little LLBG grant, that sometimes is an every other year grant. It's really a JAG grant too, but it's state controlled instead of federal.
That's the very next one, guys, if you want to look at it. What's LLEBG stand for?
It's a Burns, they call it a Burns grant. It's after somebody's name, I guess, of
Okay.
somebody that's a police officer or something.
Law enforcement Burns grant, I think it was first level.
All right, now this is the booger, this next one, and Kelly attached both the revenues and the expense sheets. The expense sheet's 2 pages long. This is one that we've gone, not with the sheriff department, but with public in general, round and round over the years about who pays for what and how it gets paid for. It's almost a $4 million budget annually. This is where we had the jail fee issue, problems between some of the municipalities. They have some tax revenues. When we built that jail out there, we did a study that would tell us how much the jail would cost, and then a study that would tell us how much how much tax it would take to build the jail. And then, we wanted to implement and did implement the Judge, were you on the court when we built that jail?
Yes.
We asked for a 1 cent sales tax, and the county went to the various cities and asked for their support because they were gonna benefit from it as much as the county was. But we went from that very small county jail that we used to have to a much larger county jail, and we knew it was gonna cost a lot more to upkeep the new county jail. Back then, the old county jail was costing us in excess of $500,000 to upkeep. It was actually about $600,000. So when we asked for the 1 cent sales tax, we were gonna, and did, sunset 3/4 of it, but we retained 1/4 cent to help offset the cost of running the county jail. Some of the cities took it that 1 cent was gonna run the county jail, and it's never been intended to be enough money. And over the years, the cost of running the jail has gone up and up. End result was we went to court, county prevailed, and the cities pay their portion. The state pays some, the feds pay some, but if you look at our local sales tax up there, we're projecting about $1.75 million on that sales tax, and that's that 1/4 cent that we're talking about. And that's pretty much right on. When you think about the 1/2 cent economic development sales tax, and it raises about 3.4 to 3.5 million, and this would be half of that. But go down to line 3498.8801, and that's transfer from county general funds. And this is what we've tried to explain to the cities, that those jail fees weren't even gonna touch what we're having to do to supplement that $1.75 million worth of taxes. In 2020, it was almost 1.5 million. Total to date, we've transferred over 651,000. Our 2021 budget, we were at 1,821,000. Extrapolating out, it comes to 2 million, and backing off 10%, back down to $1,821,272. So we're just carrying it straight across and hoping that that would be enough. That's on revenues. On expenditures. Sheriff, you want to make any points on the jail expenditure before we just... I don't think there's any super major changes made, most of it carried across.
The big reductions we see in jail fees from the cities, primarily COVID related.
Some of it's COVID, and some of it's the results of that court decision. When the city of Blytheville had to pay the county over $900,000, they backed off on the number of prisoners that they were sending dramatically. So it's kind of both.
Did they change the method that they're using to hold them temporarily or something? I mean, if a guy's arrested and you're holding him, he's gotta be held somewhere.
Sheriff, you want to address that, or?
Well, OCL quit sending us, their felonies specifically. They'd bring them out and get them booked in and take them back to OCL to city jail to avoid paying any of those fees. And the way it worked, they were responsible for them until they, that's the correct term. Well, not adjudicated until they're, the prosecuting attorney filed it in circuit court. Then it fell back over to us. But to answer your question, OCL was getting out a lot of those jail fees by bringing them out, getting them booked in, take them back down, and hold them in OCL jail. So they didn't have to pay us, on those particular inmates.
Well, I was just looking at, well, I'll talk about my town.
Liable, in our job.
Well, look at Gosmore, you know, in 2019, it was $20,000.
Right.
And so far this year, it's been 1,800.
Mhm.
Of course, I know we've gotten a lot better out there. But that's a pretty big change. That's just an example of,
Right.
of all the cities. Liable went from 97,000 down to 16,000 through all this. And I assume COVID had something to do with that. I think
It did.
the judges don't put them in jail in the middle of the epidemic.
Not only does COVID have something to do with it, but a lot of times the judges will look at other ways. Like Blythe uses an ankle monitoring system, so that they don't have to put as many in jail. When they started to realize what it costs to house a prisoner, they started looking for more innovative ways to do things. So that's cut a lot of it too.
But we're not the only one.
No, I think the hospital may be using ankle monitors now, I don't know.
I don't know.
I
My old
know
county
Blythe
that I
was for a
came
while.
out of, I understand that, which is Independence, they have a jail and the mayor and the county judge don't get along too well. But anyway, they take, the city of Batesville, from what I understand, takes their prisoners out of county. They don't even use the county jail, they have somebody else. So it's a problem everywhere over, you charged and so forth.
Kelly, how do we set that transfer funds from 911 into revenue?
That is, well, when we changed software companies and couldn't move the formula anymore, we had to add this line because 911 pays for 3 of the dispatchers, 100% of their stuff. So we just do a monthly report to see how much money needs to be transferred and then we transfer it monthly.
Sheriff, you don't have any major big deals showing here in the jail. You know, in the past, we worried about the roof and we worried about the air conditioners and stuff. Are we in pretty good physical shape out in the jail?
Well, overall, yes. I mean, we're getting ready to replace some of the carpet around the front office and, back into, not dispatch, back into the patrol room. We're gonna take the carpet up that we had there, except for in the offices, per se, and then put down, this vinyl or man-made flooring like we got in here. It's easy to clean, it don't stain, you can mop it up and so forth. So, we're getting ready to spend a little money right there. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but, that's gonna change, that'll save us some money in the long run.
And that's around 2020,
That would be
2022.
the, buildings and maintenance.
What's that, 2020?
20.
2020.
So, 1,421.
$62,000. And going back to that inmate transfer, particularly on the juveniles, all that will reflect in the juvenile.
Mr. 31st, in 8910 jail board, Justice White, that is 8910, that's they've been putting about 12,000 a year in there to just for adult polish. They boosted that to 150, and that was in anticipation of juvenile. That is what the sheriff was talking about. We'd like to actually move the majority of that over to juvenile, and them house that in their budget so that they would keep a closer eye on it. And then you could probably move the sheriff back down to about 12,000 because he does have some that he can't keep in the county. If we were to have someone that, I think the last case was homicidal police officers.
Well,
that they want
we've
in
had
this
to-
jail.
We've had to house some in Craighead County, another place that, they had not necessarily a relative inmate in jail there, but another party to that crime or a similar crime that rumor came out, they threatened the others, we had to move them to another county, keep them away. So we do have incurred some expenses for housing, in the adult side of the house. But that $150,000 would be strictly for potentially housing juveniles.
Kelly, is Daryl responsible for preparing the juvenile budget? So have you or you either one talked to Daryl about this?
No.
budget?
I just wanted to talk to you first, and then we'll get with Daryl, bring this up to him.
I've got a question. Why do you think, so both, the transport and the sheriff's budget and the jail budget, like where we are year to date is significantly above where we were even last year to the end of the year? I mean, if we're seeing, but everything else looks down, why are we transporting and putting so many people other places? I guess is my question.
Which line item you get?
Well, like,
Jail board.
if you look at jail board, for 19 was 6,000, 20 was 8,700, and this year, even to just 831, we're at 13,000.
Right.
So, if we were seeing less, I mean, why are we transporting more people if we're seeing less prisoners?
Sure.
Well,
A lot of those transports we're talking about have been those out-of-state ones, and the out-of-state transports has really went up. And, on us, when we have to go out of state to pick up somebody, we've got warrants on here. And also, we're doing a whole lot more, seem like we're doing a whole lot more mental health runs, the, Conway and
Little Rock.
And we're doing a lot of transports, whole lot of transports.
I think our biggest concern is, I just saw that too, on the jail board though, we're already at 13,000 this year. And we only budgeted, it was like 12,000.
Right.
You know, and that's how, that boarding is housing them, that's not the transport. Why have we had to transport send so many to another jail?
Why are we boarding people and inmates somewhere else? Other than, you just gave us some of
Right,
those.
and we had to go out of state, I don't remember if it was in this 21 or 2020 and pick up a person and, in one case we had to fly one of our deputies out. And then like the year that we got the little girl that wound up leaving here and went to Washington State.
That's not this year.
No,
But wouldn't that be under transfer? Isn't there another line item for that? This is the actual room and board, correct?
Are we having to pay the other states to board the prisoners until we get them picked up?
I haven't seen a bill,
So that
no.
should be in that line.
See, she's looking at line item 8910. It's the next to the last line item on the second page of the expenditures.
Sure. That's where Daryl's sending those ones that couldn't be housed out there with those ones charged with adults. He was sending them to Craighead County.
Justin, you hear that?
Sorry.
All right. When they have juveniles that can't be housed out there with these three that's charged as adult, their alternative's been sent them out of the county to different facilities. So that's where most of this came from.
And it's showing up that even though they're juveniles.
That's right.
They have to be paid for.
And, that's another reason I'd like to move that line item over into his budget so he can manage it instead of, blowing my budget up out of line, if you will.
Technically, both budgets should have a line item for boarding, right?
Yes,
Is what you're
yes, but
saying?
his will have more
Right, okay,
because of juveniles.
right.
I mean, it's
So you're-
not very often that we send adult inmates out of the county.
So you're talking about taking up that 150K, taking 138 to him and leaving 12 for your budget?
150.
You're taking the entire 150 to him?
We get billed for it.
What's all that
Here,
150?
they were sending several juveniles over to Craighead County, we get billed for it. And that's what the sheriff says, this is a lot of juveniles in that jail.
We, just as Ashton and I decided to wait till we get here to discuss this.
Okay, okay,
This had been fully discussed before.
okay. So your line item would stay 12, and that
Yes.
entire 150 would also go under the juvenile.
So it'd actually be like 162 that would be there.
That's right.
Well, I think we should, when we do the juvenile budget, I think we should look back at this. And because I very specifically remember asking about that and was told that we were not transporting juveniles to other facilities. So we couldn't even remember the last time we did that.
Right. That
That's
conversation.
exactly right, because our juvie jail was,
I just asked Kelly, and she says that most of it is juvenile.
I mean, I believe you. I'm just simply saying, I very specifically
Why did
asked.
Daryl not
Yes, I very specifically
more
said, they were like, no, we can't even, we had one woman and she couldn't stay in there because, I mean, y'all remember the conversation? Yeah.
I do, just saying.
Just saying. I mean, and still, even no matter what, it's still a very, I mean, it's a huge savings. It just seems like all the other numbers for this year went down. It seems strange that our transport and housing at other facilities went up.
how do y'all feel about moving that 150 or 135 or whatever number we come up with and move it over into the juvie budget?
I think they should have their own line item for sure.
Most definitely, even, yes.
Well, that was one of the main concerns on their side about the juvenile jail, about the transport part, that needs to be in the juvenile part.
You know, we called them a new vehicle. It was last year, year before, they got 2 vehicles, so they should be able to transport non-violent. The big thing here, I think we need to figure out is, and I wholeheartedly agree with the sheriff, put it under Daryl's budget so that he can look at it and see how many people he's housing out, that he can come in next year if he's having problems and ask for more money. But, you know, we need to hold him accountable for what he's doing, because as we heard his supervisor say in this very room, they're putting less and less people into the juvenile system because that's what the judges want to do. So I think that's a good way for him to see exactly where the money's going, and he can control it that way if we put a line item in his for jail board for juveniles.
I think you have to separate them, sure.
We're all agreeing with the sheriff and
I'd like
moving
to
that.
comment, I think part of the question you asked too. A lot of the times, Darryl Turner would have the sheriff's office or whichever police department stop that juvenile. Once he found a location where they go, say if it's outside Mississippi County or out to our jail in the past, he would have require them to bring them out to our place. He didn't transport it. And then when he did have them somewhere else, that's where these are housing charges here. And like he said here in the meeting last week, and we talked with the supervisor here about, he's wanting me to transport every one of his juveniles wherever. And I said, if it's a misdemeanor juvenile, I got a little heartburn with that. Y'all got 2 vehicles that the county's funding. Why can't you transport them? Now, if it's a violent juvenile or they committed murder, then I think we should take care of that because we're the ones carrying the gun in the bag.
They could go together.
But I mean, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
I'm
no,
talking right here that-
completely, I completely do. I mean, if they have transport vehicles and it's
They
non-violent, I
transport them,
can't.
it's a
why can't
violent,
they
and I don't have a problem with transporting them anywhere.
So just out of curiosity, just for conversation's sake, so you moved the 3 that were out there, is that
They're not
correct?
moved yet.
Oh, they're not moved
They're
yet?
not moved yet because they got COVID. So
Oh.
they're still on the quarantine. As soon as they get off quarantine, they're leaving,
Okay.
which should be Thursday of this week.
But if y'all have a location, did you have any problem finding a spot to put them? Okay.
Of course, that's a juvenile's responsibility, officers to find out which one they go to.
Gotcha, okay.
Whether it's Craig Head or down here Crittenden or can't go to Basement anymore because they closed that facility. They didn't want to talk about it last week, but they closed that for several months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did a little reading about that.
I don't really want to go over that.
I think you got Bo behind you, won't you?
Yeah.
Carter got charged, but remember, we shut the juvenile unit down for about a month when we had COVID out there. We had females over in the juvenile unit, and those 3 females went over there to Frederick County for a month. So that was part of that.
So they're kind of over from what?
And part of that was COVID related.
But I don't mean to be going dark. I don't want to throw darts at anybody. But another reason I would like to move that 150,000, or whatever you all decide it's gonna be, to his budget, so he can manage it. If we leave it on my side of the house, it's quite evident he didn't want that juvenile facility closed. So it's gonna keep him from loading us up at other facilities and blowing my budget out. If he's managing his budget, he'll keep it in check.
I'm just, how'd we come up with 150,000?
$100 a day is what he talked about
What,
before.
we just wanted a number out there. Basically, we said, we need to budget something. And I was thinking 150,000 for all of it. If you want to do 12,000 for the sheriff's department and then move the rest of it to juvenile. Now, with what they were averaging last year at 3 a day, or 1.5 a day, well, if you did 1.5 a day times 365 days, and I did $100 a day just to be on the safe side, you're talking about
Almost 55,000.
$54,750. So technically, you can set it at 60,000. I was
You're trying to go on the high side.
I was trying to get on the high side so we made sure everything was covered.
Well, that would include transporting and boarding, right? The 150 would count transporting and boarding, or?
Well, no,
No,
there's
that's
separate line
separate.
items for it. This is strictly boarding.
Well, then I don't think the boarding should be that. I mean, especially if we've been boarding people this year. I mean,
Well, we're gonna look at putting everything on them next year, and as you can see, as they pointed out, the sheriff had 12,000 dedicated this year for boarding and other places. Well, we've already went over that because we spent, apparently a month with these three that were charged as adults in Crittenden County because they had to close the juvenile jail because of COVID and all this stuff. Well, then we brought them back here. But then we were sending other people out too, apparently females and things of this nature. So,
I think 75,000 is a much
I
more
can go with
realistic figure, and then put some money in there. That's what.
Well, it's just a guess until we get 1 year behind us.
Right.
Exactly
Right.
and if we put 75,000 on it, he holds it under 75, hey, we did a good thing. And if it goes over, then maybe we need to look at it, but I think leaving 12,000 in the sheriff's budget for him to house people in other places, if necessary, and then possibly 75,000 in the juvenile budget for them to house people.
So go ahead and drop sheriff down to the 12,000 that you had in the
That's what I
past.
would do, yes.
And then we'll plan on putting 75 over into the juvie on the same line item. Kelly, you taking those on?
Should we add some money for,
Transport?
transport?
Yeah,
I don't see a
I
line.
think,
Transport.
I could find one
Oh,
here.
that's much.
we're looking at juvenile though. You don't have we don't have the juvenile expenditure budget.
Where's the one, what number is the one for the sheriff's, for this one, so I can find it either one?
On the sheriff's department?
Yeah, what line
It's
is it?
in the sheriff's department. budget,
Yeah, I was in there.
30.
Okay, so it's,
33rd, what was it?
And let's see, looks like we had total of 3,000, but it looks like we're over.
5,000 is what we
this year.
budgeted for 2020.
But we're at 60, see, that's what I'm saying.
that is confusing, because you can't determine which is for juveniles and which was for adults, so they definitely need to be split out.
Split out, yeah.
But I do think, especially if we have, or they're gonna have to transport for sure the violent offenders, then we may need to
Bump it.
bump it.
But we can, we can always amend the budget. We just gotta have a starting point.
Might recommend that we bump that to 10,000,
I think so.
just to give him some room.
I think
On
so.
the transport,
Yeah, instead of that.
you're talking about on the sheriff's
On the
budget.
sheriff's budget, whereas we've been budgeting. 30,000, move it up to about 10, because he's already at 6 this year. Sheriff, what do you think on that?
Be fine.
I mean, juvenile will have their own transport budget as well.
They should have one already, and I would think, I'll defer to Kelly on that, but they should have one.
Does Daryl prepare his own, or do you help him with it?
He usually gives me the numbers.
Okay. So,
I'll leave here today, I'll go by and talk to you.
okay. That's where I was going.
I'll go by and talk to you.
What do y'all think?
I think, yeah.
I think that's better.
It needs to be separated for sure.
Sheriff, any other points on your jail?
Not that I'm aware of whether the 4 weeks we're gonna do through, mainly the sheriff's office part of it. And, I'm not sure what we're gonna do. We'll go right there.
In admin, just in
So we'll have a little pouring in that, and most of it will be up front. Because the carpet gets stained, you can't get the stains up, and I'd rather go with this, and it's gonna be with a long time, it's easy, clean, maintain.
Committee members, JPs, y'all got questions of the sheriff or his deputies? Appreciate you bringing your helpers back there, the major and the captains and such, a big help. Even if the major doesn't talk. Any other questions, guys? Kelly, any remarks, ma'am? All right, so that's the expenditure budgets that we have for today. I talked to our county collector this morning for a minute, and she informed me that she had already done her expenditure budget and will have it ready for presentation next week. Is that right, Miss County Collector?
Yes, it is.
She went over it briefly with me in her office, while it's gonna look nice. So, a few changes to be made and all over it.
I've also already met with circuit clerk and done her budget.
Oh, really? All 6 or 7 of them?
Yes.
Sweet.
She just couldn't be here today because of court, so I'm not sure what her schedule is or what day she's gonna come, but she wants to come soon, she knows.
Well, we don't wanna do it without her here.
And, I've gotten senior citizens, but like I said, Amanda's on vacation, so we'll meet next week together, and so maybe we can do it the following Monday, but, and then I think Peggy and I will have ours done for next week. Yeah, so that's,
Is the county clerk avoiding you? She's ignoring me.
No, I'm not. I'll get it to you, Kelly.
so, yeah, you know, if you've already ready, or on the agenda, I should say.
Well, we'd like to encourage all of them, all the department heads, to please continue to get these together, because it doesn't take us long to go through them if we have them to look at, but when we have to wait and wait and wait, and we would really like to have this put together for a presentation in our regular court meeting in our November meeting. Judge, we're through with our budget looks at for today. You got comments, remarks?
No, I think everything's moving along very well.
I've got one other thing then, guys. When we made some changes or when we enacted that hiring freeze the other day, we told them that if the department head had something that needed to be attended to or taken care of, in the wording of the ordinance that we did that with, it said that they would need to refer back to the finance committee as opposed to the personnel committee. And I don't know that it makes any particular difference, but the chairman of the personnel committee, who's sitting behind me, noted that we have 2 exceptions. Justice Ash?
Yes, the senior citizens has lost one of the kitchen helpers. They need to replace him as soon as possible. They retired with his health issues. And the sheriff's department has had a deputy quit. We had already discussed the one that was retiring middle of November. That was Rosciola, end of October. We were gonna allow him to fill that position. He's had another deputy since then, been out on medical leave, but he has turned in his resignation. He needs to replace him. He is a road deputy. And then was there
One in
another?
the jail, it vacant slot in the jail.
Yes, he still has that one vacant slot in the jail. And I think we discussed that we're gonna allow him to fill that when we did his budget, but he would like to fill those positions as well.
Do I have a motion from the committee, we allow those to be filled?
Yeah, if they were, I mean, if somebody quit and you're just replacing that person, I
They're
mean,
not asking for additional
yeah, they're not
personnel.
asking for additional personnel, so. I'll, make the motion to go ahead and refill those slots.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. And the sheriff, and then we'll notify the senior citizens if they can do what they need to do.
Okay, I appreciate that very much.
Kelly, anything else, ma'am? We have 5 elected officials here today, and I'm very grateful, Judge, so glad, thank you for coming.
Appreciate everything y'all do.
So without that, guys, we've got an efficiency committee meeting directly after this. I'm not sure what's on the agenda, but we have Justice McDonald that will do a fine job of chairing. We call this one adjourned, and thank you very much.